year, which is attempting to create a structure for regulating the internet. A lot of us don't like that idea. On the 29th of March, we'll be having a session on the latest developments in privacy. You probably saw the White House announcement about privacy principles. That's going to be here. And in April, we have a couple of events coming. We're going to do a live webcast from Geneva meeting of the Internet Society. We're celebrating the 20th anniversary of ISOC, the end of April. David is going to be there, and we're going to connect in and again have a breakfast to watch what's going on and to talk about developments. And then last, David and I are organizing something on transparency versus corruption, the internet as disinfectant. We're doing that with George Mason University. We're still looking for a couple speakers, so if you have ideas, please let me know. That will probably be April 17th.
So you can have a sub-session hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight. Well, that we can talk.
I've always believed in that because my theory is the authorities use their peripheral vision.
Well, that's why the Japanese say yes.
All right. So, Brock, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
All right. Let's start with the Q&A. I'm sure somebody has a question. Give you the mic.
Henning Schutzmani. It's a general question, so anybody who feels inspired may take that on, and I suspect it applies roughly to all of them, is we've heard a number of presentations about inspiring local efforts on getting new ways of getting bandwidth to different types of communities, business, residential, etc. What I'm concerned with is scale. We have seen community networks, but if you look at the number of people that are served after a number of years, 10, 20 years by community networks, I suspect it's well below 1%. And so the question that I wonder about is, and I mean, we have roughly probably 100 million residences, so serving a few dozen residences is nice, but we're going to be looking at a scale of hundreds of years at that rate before we get anywhere close to 100 million. So I'm curious what ideas you have to actually scale this up in a realistic way, which does not rely on graduate students.
The same challenge our chapter faces.
So, in a sense, you have to figure out what need you meet. And the current internet applications are well tuned for the distribution system. We repurposed the video distribution system. We got YouTube. What do you expect? So I think the real problem is what is the point of computing networks? I mean, in some cases you're doing outreach, people don't have it. But you don't scale it by saying we're going to scale it in the model of phone companies. We're going to try to serve all these people. In fact, I would argue that we have 100 million people on community networks now. You know, each home is a community network. We're just negotiating at what point that transitions into the old model, and at some point it'll flash over and interconnect. So I don't think the community networks in itself are the goal. The goal is really to sort of reframe the model so we start getting local connectivity building out that transitions into, you know, local communities right now to interconnect have to buy the passage like we did in the 1960s from a phone company in the middle. And as we increase the scope, those will start to interconnect. And at some point, the meme or the framing changes, and then you get the flashover. So it's not sort of like the phone company, how we build our towers, is how do we eliminate the towers as in a wider areas.
I agree with what Bob said about, you know, it's a different, scaling sort of assumes that you want to enter into the model that the telecom industry or basically any industry to speak of already operates on. One that is, we want to find out something we can do well, and then by scaling up massively, the cost will come down, we'll make a profit, and like that'll be fine. You know, like what I want to scale for is not the Mount Pleasant network. You know, I want the Mount Pleasant network to scale to cover Mount Pleasant And that is, that's like, I don't know, 5,000 people, something like that. That's about 10 blocks by 10 blocks. And then I'm happy, in Mount Pleasant's case, to let that stand. That's where the capacity needs to be. The capacity in Mount Pleasant needs to be there to serve Mount Pleasant. What I would like to scale are the skills and the idea. So, Bloomingdale, I don't live in Bloomingdale. And recently, a lot of the technologists that are working with the broadband bridge in Bloomingdale have moved out of Bloomingdale. They've moved up to other places in Ward 5, or they've moved out to Maryland. And as a result, now Bloomingdale is without local community technology talent. That's the problem that will cause the Bloomingdale network to calcify if we don't find new community technologist talent in Bloomingdale. It's not a case of wanting to find now that this network is successful on a 10-block scale, let's make it work for the whole world. It's not about spreading that network to the whole world. It's about identifying the talent in each community and each neighborhood that would then be able to work in their way with their local realities and with the local social network to see what works community by community by community. And I look forward to the day, one day, when Mount Pleasant will eventually connect with Columbia Heights, will connect with U Street, will connect with the broadband bridge in Bloomingdale, will then eventually connect to Anacostia and beyond. But those are going to be individual efforts that I, for example, am happy to advise on, but I can't be the technologist in Anacostia. I can't be the technologist on U Street.
Actually, you raised 2 points I need to point out. Home networks don't...
Could I stick in a comment also at some point?
I'll let you, bro. Okay.
Yeah, Brock, you probably have a lot to say on scaling this up.
Let me just make 2 observations. First is that people purchasing products, and this is in support of Bob's thesis, people purchasing products are much more likely to build over time, say over 10 or 15 years, a network that far exceeds anything that a centrally organized network might build. And I would point specifically to the LTE networks that Verizon and AT&T are rolling out. They already acknowledge that that technology is optimized for mobility and a pile of other issues. It's not optimized for passing data. And when you're sitting still, the best thing you can do is offload to Wi-Fi. There are thousands of times more Wi-Fi access points in existence in the world than femtocells, and the carriers basically accepted the idea that their 4G networks will not be able to carry the traffic, and the only thing that can save them is Wi-Fi because it's already pervasive, far more dense than the carriers either are or ever will aspire to be. That's because consumers, tens of millions of individuals and businesses purchase the devices. They didn't purchase the service from a central something. So Wi-Fi has certainly scaled. It took 15 years, but today I believe that 40% of the traffic on Verizon's LTE network is actually, that's 40% of the bytes, not the dollars, 40% of the bytes are already offloaded to Wi-Fi, and that's only going to go up. In the end, Verizon is selling you connectivity, but almost all of the bytes are going to go over Wi-Fi, built by people who purchase products, not by Verizon. The other point about scaling, and again, this is scaling over 10 and 15 years. If you look at what NetBlazer is doing, now we're not going after residences, at least in the first 5 years, because the technology we have today doesn't support it and a bunch of other reasons. But we are absolutely a neighborhood by neighborhood, and the difference here, very similar to what Preston is arguing, except we are explicitly dealing with the upstream connectivity. I don't expect our neighborhoods necessarily to connect to each other by building something else. We already have the internet. And the reality is most everybody I know wants to get connected to the internet. They don't necessarily want to talk to their neighbors, or their neighbors represent 3% of their traffic. 97% is connections to the internet. And in fact, they talk to their neighbors via Facebook, not by email direct to one-to-one. So the point is, we're building neighborhoods, but what we're really building is cloud-based software that incents people to join a community and then manages the network on their behalf. We clone that neighborhood by neighborhood, and it is absolutely our intention to have hundreds of neighborhoods in each of the top 50 markets, so it may take more than 5 years to get there, but it certainly will take less than 10 years. There's no reason why this won't scale to a national thing. The closing slide in my pitch to investors shows the current market for just those limited segment that we're focused on, that is businesses between 5 and 200 employees in the top 50 markets. They spent $11.9 billion on internet connectivity in 2009. My goal is to take that $12 billion market and turn it into a $2 billion market within the next 10 years. That's the kind of what needs to be squeezed out of the current duopoly.
Wow.
Thank you.
Just one quick thing I want to add. No grad students. You either can do it yourself, or you hire Geek Squad, or the people do your sidewalks.
Well, this is an absolutely fascinating collection of speakers here whose different perspectives, I think, got intertwined wonderfully. You know, as I think about what Bob is talking about, because, you know, I must say, when I was at Cirrus Logic prior to 1995, you know, I built a transcontinental piece of the internet for my company, and so that you know, it was do-it-yourself at a corporate level. Okay? And we actually contributed bandwidth to the overall network, although not a lot. But, so when I think about the various things, you know, and I'm now involved in a homeowners association, which is an interesting place for thinking about providing service at a kind of a community level, because you've actually got some money available. So that the whole idea of providing internet service to an apartment complex, a collection of townhomes, something like this, seems to me to be a really interesting business opportunity for the kind of thing for a community-based technology that is leading in the direction that Bob is talking about. It seems to me that one of the tricks there, because I would love to be able to offer like internet service to my collection of townhomes. And part of the problem as I think about that, because I've just started thinking about it as Bob brought me to this meeting, was, you know, how do you, where it seems to me that, you know, at my house, where I've got my own do-it-yourself internet in my own house, Wi-Fi based, I'm on the cable. And my cable says, oh yeah, you can have 3 IP addresses, okay? And I haven't quite figured out, because I'm not spending my time worrying about that, how to get around that yet. But it seems to me that at a townhome, at a development level, you're looking more at the kind of thing that Ruff is talking about, where he says, look, let's go to somebody who's actually buying raw bits at the very, you know, at the wholesale level, and is actually already using Bob's model. Let's buy it from them, and then we connect in our townhome, and then we have to have our own infrastructure from there. So, so if guys could help shed light on how to help people do this kind of stuff, that'd be great.
Well, again, the very short answer is, okay. The short answer is that we need, just like you don't fix your own furnace, you know, this is sort of the next stage from Geek Squad, people you come to who can help you buy bulk capacity, whether you buy through Broke or whatever. You know, so I can't tell you who to speak to right now, but I'm speaking to people who want to do businesses you can go to, because it's just another service business. The one thing I will say is internally, though, you would like to share the infrastructure in common. You don't want to bill people for usage or anything. So that's a piece I'm actually trying to get up. You know, we have example Preston's doing that in his case, but what you need is basically the expertise you can buy.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the issue of community technologists and that talent existing in your community to help out. This is one of the projects in the broadband bridge and in Mount Pleasant that I'm really trying to get off the ground, aside from just the physical wireless infrastructure, and the social structure that supports the wireless network as far as hosting a router on your house or on your roof, is that I'm really trying to figure out now, and especially in partnership with ISOC-DC, who very thankfully is based, it's a hackerspace that's very thankfully based 4 blocks away from my home. I'm trying to figure out how do we identify people with talent and who want to gain talent in being a community technologist. This is going on also in Detroit at the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition. You've heard mentioned them before. Open Technology Initiative is part of the Detroit Digital Justice Coalition through some BTOP grants. And in Detroit, they're trying this program out called Digital Stewards. They're trying to identify, like, what is the training program and what is the way we identify people who would come and learn a specific set of skills, some wireless engineering, some handyman skills, some basic, like, here's how to think about privacy, here's how to talk to your neighbors about the internet and how to talk to them about what is the electricity cost to put a router on my roof. Everything that you would kind of need to know as a basic community handyman for this particular purpose. They call it digital stewards, and I'm calling it a community technologist, but I'm trying to work on how do we identify those people, how do we identify just what skills are needed, and we get both the acumen and interest to learn this, and also the talent that already has these skills who's willing to share it. And I don't know everything. Like, actually, I can put a router up on a house and I can install some software on that router, but I have yet to really learn the deeper bits of how to get really fine with quality of service hacking and firewall stuff, which I'm interested, I kind of want to learn that as a personal hobby, but it will also help this work. But the challenge is, again, scaling that program essentially to gaining more talent. As far as like an apartment building, like you were mentioning, like a larger apartment building, there have been several folks who've come and asked about that. One of our co-workers at OTI, we just put several routers in her apartment to kind of see how could we serve the whole apartment from 1 or 2 big connections. And it's, we're learning some interesting stuff from that, everything from optimal placement to, where do you want the wires to go.
But who provides the connection to the apartment?
So the connection to the apartment in this particular case was managed at the top level by the building manager. The building manager saw something cool here. My coworker was able to convince the building manager this is an opportunity that we could use to give. It's an art space loft, actually. It's subsidized housing for people who are artists. And my coworker's partner is an artist. And so she said, okay, we need to get people some reliable internet connections, but it's really expensive.